At 8:17 a.m. local time, the Caribbean Sea looks almost unreal in its calm. The surface is smooth and level, like a sheet of blue metal, stretching all the way to the horizon. There are no heavy swells, no storm clouds, no obvious sign that anything unusual is unfolding. To anyone looking from a distance, it appears to be an ordinary morning at sea. But aboard the USS Gerald R. Ford, the ocean is never judged by sight alone. It starts with a single return on radar. Faint, distant, easy to miss for anyone without training. A surface contact appears at the far edge of the picture. No AIS signal, no civilian identification, no radio traffic, just a metallic object moving steadily through a known maritime corridor. On a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, that kind of silence is noticed immediately. The report is delivered in the calm, clipped tone of professionals who know exactly what matters and what does not. Surface contact bearing 2110, range decreasing. Nobody rushes, nobody overreacts. Calm is not a mood on a ship like this. It is procedure. Combat systems begin updating automatically. Layers of sensor data sharpen the picture as the radar geometry improves. The contact becomes more defined. It is not a merchant ship, not a fishing boat. The structure, the silhouette, the movement pattern all point in a different direction. Military. Then a second contact appears. Minutes later, a third. 3 Venezuelan naval vessels, loosely spaced, adjusting their courses in a way that places them directly across the projected path of the USS Gerald R. Ford. There are no bridge-to-bridge calls, no request to coordinate movement, no statement of intent. Inside the Combat Information Center, the atmosphere changes, but not into panic, into precision. This is no longer random traffic. This is deliberate positioning. The Gerald R. Ford is not a lone ship wandering close to shore. It is the centerpiece of a carrier strike group operating lawfully in international waters. Every mile around it is watched. Every signal is recorded. Every movement means something. The first attempt to make contact goes out over the radio in English. No reply. The call is repeated in Spanish. Still nothing. At sea, silence can mean very little. Radios fail. Crews hesitate. Messages are missed. But when that silence comes together with course changes and increasing speed, it begins to carry its own meaning. The Venezuelan vessels start to accelerate, not dramatically, but enough to reduce the closest point of approach. The safe margin is getting smaller. On the flight deck, life continues without visible disruption. Aircraft remain secured. Deck crews move through their routines. No alarms echo across the ship. No one is shouting. On a vessel like the Ford, serious moments do not arrive with noise. They arrive quietly, through numbers on a screen and the tone of a report. Contact altering course, intent unclear. The words are measured, the behavior is not. The next order is almost automatic. Launch helicopter, establish visual. An MH-60R Seahawk is prepared and sent up, not as a threat and not as theater, but because seeing matters. In modern naval operations, visibility can matter just as much as force. At the same time, the Ford sensor posture shifts with discipline. Radar remains controlled and professional. No aggressive locks, no unnecessary emissions. Just enough to collect everything. Speed changes, hull alignment, electronic signatures leaking from the approaching ships. Every fragment of information is captured. This is the part most people never witness. There are no dramatic flashes, no impact, no instant headline. And yet every second matters. Every small movement carries weight. Every decision becomes part of a larger test. The Venezuelan vessels continue forward. Still no meaningful radio response. Still closing. They are not launching an attack. They are issuing a challenge. What they may not fully grasp is what it means to challenge an aircraft carrier. Not simply a ship, but a system. Not just steel and a runway, but a connected network tied to satellites, escorts, aircraft, submarines, and command structures extending far beyond the horizon. By 8:24 a.m., every turn of their rudders, every pulse of radar, every second of radio silence is being logged, time-stamped, geolocated, and archived. This is not escalation for the sake of drama. This is documentation. And from that point on, the moment stops being only about distance. It becomes about decisions. From the outside, the USS Gerald R. Ford may look like a single gray hull moving across open water, with a broad flat deck and rows of parked aircraft. To an untrained eye, it is just another carrier at sea. Inside the strike group, no one sees it that way. The Ford never operates alone. Below the surface, a fast attack submarine keeps silent separation, tracking movement around the formation. Off the carrier's flanks, Aegis-equipped destroyers hold position, their radars sweeping air and sea in overlapping fields. Farther out, another surface combatant extends the screen, pushing the sensor horizon well past visual range. Above all of it, the air picture remains continuous. E-2D Hawkeyes cycle overhead, fusing radar tracks into one shared tactical view. Fighters wait on alert, crews briefed, launch procedures rehearsed, fuel and ordnance already prepared. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is improvised. This is not one ship. It is an entire layered machine. As the Venezuelan vessels continue to approach, the strike group does not answer with noise or spectacle. It answers with alignment. Bearings are confirmed. Tracking solutions remain ready but inactive. Internal communications stay disciplined. Every unit sees the same picture in real time. The Venezuelan ships are now well inside the outer surveillance ring. Their hulls are clear on radar. Their engine patterns are steady. Their course adjustments are deliberate. They are close enough to be noticed, not yet close enough to matter in the way they may hope. On the Ford's bridge, the captain watches numbers, not scenery, distance, closure rate, closest point of approach, time. This is not a moment for emotion. It is a moment for mathematics. No one assumes the worst, but no one dismisses the risk either. The rules are clear. The ship will not provoke. It will not chase. It will not blink. Presence is maintained. Course is held. Every change is recorded. That discipline is intentional. In modern naval encounters, escalation rarely begins with visible force. It begins with posture, a slight increase in speed, a cut across a projected course, radio silence, a deliberate reduction in safe passing distance. These are the signals that actually matter. The Venezuelan ships are sending them one by one. Even so, the response remains measured. The MH-60R lifts smoothly over the water and moves into position to establish visual contact. Its systems come alive immediately. Forward-looking infrared, long-range optics, passive electronic detection, everything feeds back to the carrier in real time. The helicopter does not sweep aggressively across their bow. It does not hover in a theatrical display. It simply becomes visible, unmistakable, and professional. A reminder that nothing here is unseen. Back aboard the Ford, radar operators detect faint emissions from the Venezuelan vessels. Not targeting systems, not direct weapons guidance, but active search radar. They are looking back. That matters. Every emission is logged by frequency, duration, and pattern. These details do not create dramatic headlines, but they shape how every future encounter is understood. Information gathered without a single shot is often the most valuable information of all. The Venezuelan vessels slow slightly, then alter course by a few degrees. Not enough to disengage, just enough to signal hesitation. This is where miscalculation becomes dangerous. From a distance, restraint can look like weakness. Silence can be mistaken for uncertainty. A steady course can appear indecisive. Inside the U.S. Navy, it means control. The Ford does not need to maneuver to prove anything. Its escorts already dominate the surrounding water. Its aircraft already own the airspace overhead. Its sensors already reach farther than the eye can follow. The carrier maintains course because changing course would legitimize the challenge. At this range, any sudden move by the Venezuelan ships would be seen immediately, tracked continuously, and answered with precision. They are not confronting a single hull in the water. They are inside a layered defense network built to absorb confusion and punish bad decisions. And mistakes at sea move fast. The Venezuelan commanders may believe they are creating pressure. In reality, they are shrinking their own room for error. Every mile closer shortens decision time. Every ignored radio call tightens the situation. By now, the encounter is no longer ambiguous. This is not routine traffic. This is not coincidence. It is a test, and tests work both ways. As the helicopter holds its position and the strike group maintains formation, one fact becomes clearer on every tactical display. Venezuela has moved close enough to be seen, but not close enough to avoid consequences. Whatever decision comes next will define how the encounter ends. The geometry now leaves almost no room for interpretation. The Venezuelan ships are no longer simply crossing the strike group's path. They are shaping their movement around it. Their lead vessel adjusts course again, tightening the intercept angle. Speed increases slightly, not enough to appear reckless, more than enough to be intentional. Inside the Combat Information Center, the update is immediate. Closest point of approach now under 3 nautical miles. Time to CPA, 8 minutes. That number changes everything. At sea, distance is safety. As that distance disappears, options begin to collapse. The USS Gerald R. Ford remains steady, 30 knots of nuclear power driving it forward, locked onto course with deliberate predictability. To alter now would rewrite the moment as avoidance. That is not the message being sent. The message is simple and unmistakable. Control, The MH-60R Seahawk tightens its orbit while maintaining a safe offset from the lead Venezuelan ship. Its sensors capture sharper imagery now. Personnel can be seen topside. Movement near the forward mount is noted. No weapons appear to be actively manned. No protective covers are visibly removed. Still, the helicopter's presence becomes a clear dividing line. A radio transmission goes out from the aircraft, crisp, steady, and unraised. Venezuelan naval vessel, this is a United States Navy helicopter. You are operating unsafely in international waters. Alter course immediately. The message is repeated in Spanish. This time there is a response, though not in the way anyone expects. No verbal acknowledgement, no explanation. Instead, the Venezuelan ship emits a short burst of active radar energy. Brief, controlled, intentional. Inside the Ford's electronic warfare suite, the signal is captured instantly. The contact is now painting with low-power surface search radar. It is not direct targeting, but it is no longer passive either. That is the threshold. Rules of engagement do not automatically define radar emissions as hostile, but context matters. A radar burst paired with continued closure, radio silence, and sustained proximity is not neutral behavior. It becomes an indicator. From that moment on, the situation shifts from ambiguous to documented escalation. The Ford responds the way it has all along, quietly. No jamming, no dramatic posture, no unnecessary escalation, only recording, frequency, pulse repetition, sweep rate, signature pattern. Everything is stored. The ship is not arguing. It is building a record. On the bridge, the captain receives the update. He does not raise his voice. He does not order a turn. He gives a command that says everything about the posture of the ship. Maintain course. Log everything. The Venezuelan vessels press closer. 2.5 nautical miles, then 2.2. To the eye, the water between the ships still looks open and calm. But the mathematics have changed. At this distance, even a minor steering error could trigger collision protocols. At this distance, intent becomes harder to deny. The helicopter shifts lower, just enough to become impossible to ignore. A green laser designator pulses once, steady and centered on the lead ship's bridge windows. Non-lethal. Controlled. Unmistakable. Not a warning shot, not theatrics, more like a message in light. We see you clearly. For a few long seconds, nothing changes. Then the lead Venezuelan vessel's wake begins to shorten. Speed drops by 2 knots. A slight turn follows, barely 5 degrees off the Ford's track. Inside the CIC, the numbers begin to update again. Contact reducing speed. Course adjustment observed. The second vessel follows moments later, the third remains farther back and stops closing. The box begins to open. This is not a retreat, not fully. It is a recalibration, a recognition that the line has been reached and that continuing forward would narrow the outcome in ways no commander wants. Then, at last, the radio crackles. A Venezuelan voice breaks the silence, formal, controlled, and carefully measured. United States naval vessel. The reply comes back measured, steady, and completely controlled. We are conducting sovereign patrol operations near Venezuelan waters. The answer from the Ford follows without delay, just as calm, just as precise. Venezuelan naval vessel. This is a United States warship conducting lawful transit in international waters. Your movements are being recorded. Unsafe maneuvers will be considered escalatory. There is no tension in the voice, no raised tone, no emotion layered into the message. Just facts, delivered clearly. The helicopter continues its orbit for a few more moments, holding position as its sensors keep recording everything below. Then, with deliberate timing, it climbs and turns away, heading back toward the carrier. No rush, no drama, just a controlled exit. By 8:39 a.m., the distance between the ships begins to grow. The Venezuelan vessels are still there, still visible, still moving in formation, but the pressure is no longer increasing. The limit of the test has been reached. No shots are fired, no alarms sound. The Ford never changes course. And yet, something important has already been decided. What remains is not visible on the surface. Venezuela approached a carrier strike group expecting to apply pressure. What they encountered instead was something far more controlled. Pressure does not move in only one direction, and when it is applied against a system built for large-scale conflict, the response is not immediate force. It is patience, observation, memory. By 8:42 a.m., separation continues to increase. On radar, the Venezuelan ships remain present, but the geometry that once carried risk is gone. From the outside, it might look like everything is over. Inside the USS Gerald R. Ford, that assumption does not exist. This is the phase that rarely gets attention. There is no celebration, no sense of victory, only quiet, focused work. Every system on board remains active, not in a defensive posture, but in an analytical one. The last 25 minutes of data are now being processed in detail. Radar tracks, course changes, engine signatures, electronic emissions, timing, correlation. This is where the real outcome takes shape. The Venezuelan commanders likely believed they were applying pressure through proximity. By closing distance, maintaining silence, and holding formation, they may have expected to trigger a visible reaction. A course adjustment, a radio concession, something that could later be interpreted as hesitation. That assumption is where the miscalculation begins. Modern naval power is not defined by how quickly a ship reacts. It is defined by how much it understands while appearing not to react at all. Throughout the entire encounter, the Ford did not alter its course by a single degree. Its escorts did not reposition aggressively. Its aircraft did not shift into any overtly threatening posture. To an outside observer, that restraint might seem passive. In reality, it was deliberate and controlled. Every Venezuelan maneuver was captured and time-stamped. Every change in speed was logged against environmental conditions. Every radar signal, no matter how brief, was identified and categorized. Even the silence on the radio was noted, because in the right context, silence becomes a signal of its own. The MH-60R's footage adds another layer. High-resolution imagery shows deck activity, crew movement, equipment placement, and reaction timing. Combined with electronic data, it builds a detailed profile of how those ships operate under pressure. And that information does not stay on board. It is transmitted, analyzed, compared with previous encounters, and stored for future use. It shapes future decisions, future positioning, and future responses, not just in the Caribbean, but anywhere these same vessels might appear again. The Venezuelan ships did not lose in a traditional sense. They were not forced away. There was no public display, no dramatic outcome. But they revealed more than they intended. They showed how close they are willing to push without crossing a clear line. They showed how they communicate, or choose not to. They showed how quickly they adjust when the situation becomes unmistakable. Those details matter. Within the U.S. Navy, gathering information without escalation is not a side effect. It is often the objective itself. The key mistake was assuming that restraint equals uncertainty. On a carrier strike group, restraint is discipline. It is confidence backed by overwhelming capability. The Ford did not need to maneuver, lock systems, or raise its voice. Its advantage was already understood. By attempting to challenge the carrier through proximity, the Venezuelan Navy provided something far more valuable than a reaction. They provided clarity, clarity about thresholds, clarity about decision-making, clarity about behavior under observation. As the Venezuelan ships settle into a safer, parallel track, the Ford quietly returns to routine operations. Flight deck activity continues. Watches rotate. The moment becomes another entry in the log. But the impact goes beyond that entry. The next time these vessels encounter U.S. forces, the response will be shaped by what was learned here. Margins will be tighter. Assumptions will be fewer. Decisions will come faster. And the Venezuelan commanders will understand, whether openly or not, that their actions were not overlooked. They were studied. This is the quiet reality of modern naval deterrence. The most decisive moments often leave no visible trace. No smoke, no damage, no dramatic footage, just data. And in this case, data became the decisive factor. Venezuela approached the USS Gerald R. Ford expecting a visible, controlled test. What they did not fully account for was the cost of being observed so clearly by a system designed to remember everything. That is the kind of mistake that does not fade when ships disappear over the horizon. By 8:50 a.m., the Venezuelan vessels are steadily falling behind. Their radar signatures remain on display, but their paths no longer intersect with the Ford. Distance increases mile by mile. From an operational standpoint, the encounter is complete. No alarms, no weapons, no course changes, and yet the outcome is clear. This was not a dramatic confrontation. It was a controlled demonstration of restraint, awareness, and command of the situation. Exactly what modern naval presence is built to achieve. The goal was never escalation. It was control without unnecessary reaction. That goal was met. The Venezuelan Navy tested proximity. They tested silence. They tested angles and distance, looking for a reaction they could measure. What they learned is simple. A carrier strike group does not need to respond loudly to remain in control. Its strength is in patience, in layered awareness, and in the certainty that every action is seen, understood, and remembered. From the first radar contact to the final separation, the Ford operated exactly as doctrine requires. Course held, formation maintained, visibility established without provocation, every decision intentional. This is not weakness. It is confidence supported by capability. Within the U.S. Navy, escalation is not the default response to pressure. Precision is. The ability to absorb uncertainty without losing control is what separates professionalism from posturing. The lesson delivered that morning was not expressed through force. It was expressed through clarity. Clarity that international waters remain open to lawful transit. Clarity that silence does not hide intent when behavior speaks clearly. Clarity that challenging a carrier is never about one ship, but an entire system built to operate under pressure. For Venezuela, the encounter ends without public attention or official statements. But internally, the meaning is understood. They now know how close they can come before the situation shifts beyond control. They know how quickly they are detected, and they know that their actions did not go unanswered, even if the response was not visible. For the United States Navy, the moment reinforces a long-standing principle. Presence matters, restraint matters, documentation matters. Every future interaction will carry the weight of what was learned here. Every decision will be informed by recorded behavior. Every assumption will be tested against real data. This is how deterrence works today, not through spectacle, but through consistency. Not through intimidation, but through discipline. The sea remains calm as the Ford continues forward, its wake stretching steadily behind it. Flight operations proceed on schedule. Crews rotate. The ship moves exactly as planned. But the message has already been delivered. You can approach, you can test, you can challenge. What you cannot do is force the U.S. Navy to react on your terms. Because when restraint is chosen deliberately, it is not the absence of strength. It is the clearest expression of it.